very happy New Year to you. I'm Richard Bentley, this is Bodmin Road Church, and this is our first Seekers and Cynics talk for 2021, which I'm sure we all hope will be a better year than 2020. I promised at the end of last year that I would start this year looking at some of the issues around faith and science. Has science disproved God? Can you put God and science together somehow in the same package, or is that not possible? There's lots of issues around that whole question of faith and science, and that's what I want to start this year looking at. There's a view out there on the street, and you'll have heard it, and you maybe even hold it yourself, that fundamentally science and belief are in conflict. That science and faith are in conflict, that you cannot possibly put the two together. You can't view the world through the lens of science and at the same time have a faith in God. Is there really a conflict, or is there actually just a little bit of convenient propaganda from the atheist camp? Well, we'll see. It's certainly a view that you can support with some examples from history. So perhaps the most famous one is the astronomer Galileo, who famously invented the telescope and turned it towards Jupiter and was able to see the moons of the planet Jupiter. And he went to the church at the time, because the church in Italy there sort of governed all realms of knowledge, and said, hey guys, clearly the sun is at the center of the solar system, and the planets are going round the sun, and indeed the planets have got smaller moons going round them. And the church said, sorry Mr. Galileo, but we're going to lock you up for saying that. You can't say that. The earth is at the center of the universe, and all the planets and the sun and the moon go around the earth. And that was the official view that the church taught. And Galileo got himself in a lot of hot water for saying otherwise. And indeed, it's told that the priests he was trying to persuade would not even put their eye to his telescope. They refused to engage in the scientific method and to make the observation that Galileo was making. And you can take that story, which is history, and say, well, there you are, QED, science is the way forward, and the church has always stood in the way of it. What I need to say is actually it's not that simple. There are cases like Galileo, but then it also ought to be remembered that the very first person who suggested that the sun and not the earth was at the center of the solar system, and who gave us a heliocentric scheme with the sun at the middle, was himself a Catholic priest, Copernicus. And indeed, throughout history and today, there have been a great many scientists who have a faith in God. All of the great pioneers of the scientific revolution, Newton, Maxwell, Faraday, were believers. And indeed today, a great many people who work in the field of science, a number of them at the very top of their game, are believers. And that should be enough to tell you that it's not a black and white case, that if indeed QED, black and white, science has disproved Christianity and disproved God, then there should not be any scientist at all left on the planet who has a faith. But there are plenty of them. We're going to introduce you to one a little bit later on. So clearly it's not that watertight at all. I think the conflict is most obvious when we come to debate two particular areas. One is the question of miracles. Do miracles happen? Are miracles possible within a scientific worldview? And the second is the whole question of the origins of the universe, creation, evolution, Big Bang, all of that. That's really the other area where Christians and scientists often appear to come to blows. And I'm going to look at each of those two areas in turn and in detail over the next couple of weeks. Suffice to say just for now that actually what you usually find when you dig deeper is that the conflict is never between good science and sensible faith. But the conflict comes when one of either side oversteps the boundaries of their own discipline. So the conflict comes when, for example, a Christian treats the Bible as a book of science and starts making statements about the world or about science that are blatantly incorrect. And that, of course, is what happened to Galileo. The Christian church used the Bible as a science book rather than as a spiritual book, and they ended up in conflict with Galileo. The church there had overstepped the mark. They'd overstepped the boundaries. But it can happen the other way, when scientists overstep the boundaries of science and start to make comments about God and faith that are actually no more than just their opinion. They're no longer scientific statements, no longer experimentally verifiable statements. The scientist then has overstepped the bounds of his own or her own discipline. And that's where the conflict comes. Either when Christians overstep the boundaries of faith and start talking nonsense, and there's plenty of Christians who've done that, or when scientists overstep the boundaries of their own discipline. But there need not be, and there is no conflict between good science and sensible faith. And indeed, the two offer a cohesive and a complementary view of the universe. I've always found that to be the case. I've got a degree in physics and a background in science. I love science. I try and stay in touch with what's happening in the scientific field. I love science, but I've never found there to be any conflict with my faith. Well, I'm going to draw things to a close. I don't want you just to take my word on this. I'm only some small-time scientist. There are scientists far better than I who are Christians. And after I've posted this talk on the Seekers and Cynics page, I'm going to post a link to a short 4-minute little talk from a chap called Francis Collins. Francis Collins is a geneticist of international reputation. He headed up the Human Genome Project and has just last year, 2020, won the Templeton Prize. And a scientist of international respect and repute. And in the clip that I shall post straight after this, he talks about his own faith, his journey through atheism to finding faith, and it is well worth the 4 minutes to listen. So as I close, let me point you onwards to him. And here next time we'll think about miracles and how that might all fit with a scientific worldview. And so we'll see you next time.